Hello, and thank you for tuning in to Morning Buzz. I'm Adam Eisen, Membership Director at the One Club for Creativity, collector of colorful shirts, and your host. Today's episode is extra special as we have titans of the industry here to kick off our day celebrating our Creative Hall of Fame inductees. And later on, I'll be introducing you to a One Club member and photographer whose work is simply stunning, so you're not going to want to miss that. But before we get going, go ahead, find that chat box, say hi, tell us where you're tuning in from, and most importantly, send in your questions. I'll have my eye on it and make sure that they get asked towards the end of the episode. Later this evening, the One Club for Creativity will be inducting 9 incredible individuals into the Creative Hall of Fame, 2 more into the Educators Hall of Fame, and will award this year's TDC medalist. This year is extra special because it's been the first time in 5 years we've been able to hold this ceremony, so the energy is positively electric. In honor of tonight's festivities, we've invited 2 inductees, a dynamic duo, to say the least, to Morning Buzz to talk more about their careers and their iconic legacies. Janet Kestin and Nancy Vonk are co-founders of SWIM Program, a creative leadership consultancy which gives creatives powerful tools to lead effectively and impactfully. Prior to SWIM, Janet and Nancy were co-chief creative officers of Ogilvy Toronto for 13 years. Their teams delivered work like Dove's campaign for Real Beauty and Diamond Shreddies, garnering One Show and D&AD pencils, the Grand Clio, the Creativity Awards Grand Prize, and 2 Cannes Grand Prix. They have both served on numerous award show juries. Nancy became the first ever female to chair the ADC Annual Awards, and Janet served as foreman of D&AD's Writing for Advertising jury in 2014. Advertising Age magazine named them as 2 of the 100 most influential women in advertising, and Creativity magazine considered them as 2 of the top 50 most creative people in 2008. They delivered advice to young creatives through Ask Jancy for 10 years on I Have an Idea, and are authors of 2 books together, Pick Me and Darling, You Can't Do Both, and Other Noise to Ignore on Your Way Up, considered a top book in leadership. Janet and Nancy are recipients of Hall of Fame awards from Canada's Marketing Awards and the Advertising and Design Club of Canada. They've also each been honored as Women of the Year by both Women of Influence and Ani. It is my distinct honor to introduce you to Janet Kestin and Nancy Vonk. Hello, Janet. Hello, Nancy.
Hey.
Thank you both so much for joining us here today, and congratulations on this honor.
Thanks. We're excited.
To moderate the conversation, we have another industry titan over here. Please help me welcome Chief Global Creative Officer of Edelman and One Club board member, Judy John. Hi, Judy.
Hi, Adam.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for moderating today. I know this conversation is going to be terrific, and I'll hand it over to you.
Amazing. So it's such an honor for me, Nancy and Janet, to do this interview today. You are legends in your own right, but really we want to jump into your partnership, which is not common in the industry anymore. But you are probably the reigning tag team championship of advertising. And your partnership has lasted longer than most marriages in the business for sure, but probably just most marriages, period. So let's jump into, I like to do a speed round. It's, a little warm up. We'll get into some firsts of your partnership. So before you were known as Jancy, and we'll get into that, how that came to be, there was a Janet and a completely different person named Nancy. Talk to us about, let's start with first impressions, your first impression of one another when you met one another.
Yes.
Go ahead, Janet.
Yeah. All right. We're like the chipmunks. Off to you. Okay, so I'm going to say I knew nothing about Nancy when I met her for the first time, and we can talk about that later. But I knew nothing about her except her reputation, which was that she was really talented and a bit scary. So I was only a tiny bit trepidatious going into my first encounter with her. But what I found was somebody who was fun and warm and a bit scary.
Still scary.
Still
Yeah.
scary to this day.
I thought you were just going to say, and a bitch, you know, but it was just a bit scary, just one level down. And I didn't know Janet either. We were flung together doing a freelance project together. And the first time I laid eyes on her, she was just the warmest, most fun person. And I just liked her immediately. And we really, the very first thing I'd say about meeting her is that we were just kind of instant friends, which kind of was a great springboard into everything.
Wow, amazing. So your first assignment together, you got on a plane and you flew and you traveled and you did something together. Talk a little bit about that. Just like getting to know one another is hard enough, but now you're traveling together.
We actually, we only traveled to the Ogilvy office on University Avenue. And we probably took the bus because we were youngish and poor. And, but no, we were asked to. I was freelancing and doing very little of it because I had worked in advertising for a couple of years before this time, and I really hated it. And I was trying to get out of advertising, but I was doing a little bit of freelance to help pay the bills at home. And I got a call to come to Ogilvy and work with this woman that I didn't know on a pitch to help out the Chicago Ogilvy office on feminine hygiene. And we spent the whole of the Victoria Day in Canada long weekend together in one office, mostly laughing, really, because how else can you work on feminine hygiene?
It's a great start. So what was your first success together that you would say this was the beginning of something, and you could feel that this was the beginning of a long-standing partnership?
Our very first campaign was for Dove, and this is 1,000 years ago, like 91. And it was called Litmus. We called it Litmus. I don't even know what the real title of it was, but it was an idea that only would have happened with this incredible visionary client, Peter Elwood. And so we had a chance to work on a project. Imagine this. Dove's been around for 8,000 years. It's super successful. It's an account no one wants to work on. Run screaming in the other direction. But Peter Elwood was kind of the new top dog at then Lever, before it was even Unilever. And he said, you know what? We've got to do better than testimonials and 7-day tests. We have a lot of competitive threat going on right now. And let's just do something totally different. Right? Like, who's not going to just give their all and run towards that opportunity? So what we did turned into an entirely new way to talk about the brand. And a lot of other brands for women thought of it as a new way to talk to women. It was, instead of appealing to emotion and not really giving a logical reason to buy the product, they had a real reason to buy it. And we were able to show the proof objectively that it was better than anything else out there, by virtue of something Peter showed us. He's like, his research people showed us that if you took litmus paper, touched it to any soap, that yellow paper turns dark, dark, dark blue. Can't be good. It means it's very highly alkaline. Touch it to the Dove bar and nothing happens. So we just did a simple story that you saw that happen, and we named names. We named all the brands. We had the client saying, name the brands. Go ahead. put those names up there. If we get sued, we'll deal with that later. No, he didn't literally say that. I'm putting words in his mouth.
He might have said that.
But yeah, it was a game changer in that people really appreciated seeing, you know what? There is a real reason to buy it. There is something that sets Dove totally apart from every other choice. And thank you very much. I don't think I need the alkalinity of a household cleaner to wash my face.
Yeah.
So the sales are like this. All of a sudden, we no-name this team that has, nobody knew who we were. And why would they really at that point? Like, it's winning at the One Show, Cannes, and CA. So it just was this explosion of attention for a great reason. You know, it was a great brand, it was a great product, and a great client. So that was that we couldn't fail to miss, you know, something's going right.
Yeah. Yeah. It was a great success. I remember seeing it, and it was winning everywhere. And it was a demo, you know, it was just so smart, so simple. And then of course, every client said, give me one of those, which drives everyone crazy. But, you know, many of your ads, clients would say, give me one of those. So I credit you for that, but I also have cursed both your names for that as well. So let's talk about failure. No one thinks that people like you ever fail. And it's really important because it's part of learning and growing. Talk about your first failure together that really tested your partnership, because it's easy to be amazing when things are going great. It's hard, like the true test of your character and your relationship is when things like don't work out. So how did you get past that? How did you rally?
I'll just say, I don't think that particular thing ever happened to us.
What?
I don't mean not failure. Failure, the list is so long that I couldn't begin to tell you what the first was. I can tell you what some of them were, but that failure challenged our relationship. I don't think it ever did. I mean, I think that we were so solid from the beginning because we had both worked with other people before. And as I was saying at the beginning, I was trying to get out of advertising. And the only reason that I am still here today is because I met Nancy. So at no point did I not want to work with her. It changed a lot for me anyway. But we did so many dumb things. But one of the things that we talk about the most when we talk about memorable failure was for Dove body wash. And we used like a big gang of synchronized swimmers. And this is one of these like lessons in when you should actually have taken something off the table when your budget won't live up to your vision. And so it was supposed to be like this whole Esther Williams, like a old movie dancing synchronized swimming routine with the big high lens on the patterns and whatnot. And we wound up with way fewer swimmers and doing most of it actually in the shower. Oh gosh, so humiliating. But so hilarious to remember it now.
Well, lesson if we're going for comedy, really Dove and comedy, maybe not so much. And it didn't go far enough. So is that, that lesson, Judy? You've got to go all the way. You don't go part of the way. So it was just, people thought it was like sincere.
Right.
As it sounds.
Yeah, I think we've all had to learn that lesson the hard way, where you don't have the budget, but you have like massive ambition and you go for it anyway. And then on the shoot, you're just adjusting all the time. So let's talk about your first time as CCOs. As I remembered it, you were offered the position and you didn't jump at it. Actually, there were thoughts between you where you thought we should probably turn this down. So talk about why you needed convincing, and just the thought process of why wouldn't you do it? Most people jump at that chance.
We did need convincing. We needed convincing for every. This is just so pathetic, but or smart. No, let's say it's smart. We didn't want to do any. We didn't want to take any promotion until we actually wanted it. Like we genuinely want it. Versus, oh, I want that title.
Right.
But on the lame side of it, and I say that in an affectionate way, because it's a pandemic. There's a pandemic of this out there. I think we had imposter syndrome. I think there was, not good enough, not ready. Did not see. I know Janet and I can both say we didn't see ourselves as leaders. We really didn't. But we were fortunate enough to have people around us saying, actually, yes, you are. And actually, you're already doing the job, so you might as well get paid for it. And you were somebody who saw us as a leader. Like I don't know how much you really realized, Judy, that when you told us, so Judy and Janet and I were all friends for a long time before we got to the point of taking that job. And Judy had her own amazing company at the time, but she was ready to do something else for a while. And she said, you know what, if you take that job, I'll work for you if you want. And that really did make a big difference to us. We knew it's like, seriously, we're going to have Judy John as our first hire. It's going to send a really good signal. And it really, really did. And it put us, you were killing it. Yeah. Right out of the park with Lara Palmer and others and Zellers and others. And you just made us look really good. So that really was a big part of why we said yes.
Yeah, I think you were the tipping point, actually. Because you didn't need us, and lots of people were trying to hire you at that point and trying to get you to give up what you were doing, and then you just offered it to us. And I think we were so stunned that day when we left that lunch and went back to the office, like, well, we can't say no now.
Well, I appreciate that. You'd done incredible work. It was a really easy, an easy call to come and work for the two of you. And you've helped so many creatives, like just over the years at Ogilvy, but just, over the decades with your advice column and with Swim. And so I want to go back to like just how you became those people that people just sought you out, wanted your advice. And look, you're both like incredibly frank and honest. And that's what I've always loved, is just like, you just tell it the way it is. It's like, well, what should I do? And you go, stop doing that. and just like that really to the point advice. So I wanted to ask you about going back to Ask Jancy, where you were probably before Brangelina and Bennifer. You were the first Ask Jancy, this online advice column. And people all over the world like sent you questions to get your opinion. So, and then you created a book out of it called Pick Me. And it's the collection of the best Q&As. So how did you, first of all, how did you come up with that idea of we should do this? And just how did you kick that off and then write a book?
So I think one of the things people don't know about us is that Nancy grew up in the US and I in Canada. And when we met, we discovered that we had all these things in common. And one of the things that we had in common was both of us secretly wanted to be what in England they call agony ants when we grew up, which is like Ann Landers was for us and Dear Abby was in the States. And so the people that somebody writes questions to and you make up the answer and hope for the best. And we both secretly wanted to do that. And then we had the very wonderful Ignacio Oriamuno working for us as an extremely young guy. And he was somebody who saw the future, and he had the early ad site, I Have an Idea. And so we saw, he was trying to plan all the content for it. And we saw him every day. And we had one of those conversations where it was kind of like, so what if we just made ourselves available and wrote an advice column for young people? And we always loved young people, as you know, that even when they weren't that much younger than us, we just always loved working with talent and developing talent. And we realized that just from all the people we talked to, that a lot of younger folks, especially when they were first coming out of school, found it quite hard to have a creative director talk to them. And so we just decided that we were going to make ourselves the creative directors that everybody could talk to. And we did it through Ask Jancy. And so people wrote to us from, everywhere on the planet. And that was pretty fun. Do you want to take over, Nats?
Yeah, well put, Janet. The books that came out of that. Oh, by the way, can you imagine poor Ignacio? His boss is saying to him, "We can have an advice column on your site." Like, what's he gonna say?
Yes.
So a few years into having all these great Q&As, we cooked up a book, and really incredibly pivotal to that happening were both Ignacio and I have an idea, and Rick Boyko at the time at VCU Brand Center got behind it and pitched it to Adweek Books, and they loved it. And it's Wiley and Sons behind Adweek Books. So it was amazing. We got a whole bunch of superstars to contribute on the big topics that had come up. So what's not to like it, except actually writing it, which was torture. Not cut out for book writing.
Well, you've done too, so we'll get more into that. So what are, for each one of you, what was your most memorable question that you answered, or heartbreaking, or that will stay with you?
Sorry, I'm actually trying to find the exact words, because I absolutely could never tell you this without the proper language. Okay, so here's my personal favorite. How do I get the ear of an ad agency that deals with cat litter, cat food, or any item that would benefit from 2 incredible cat tricks? I have an odd breed of cat, a Cornish Rex, with curly ears. And it's what he does that will make a showstopper ad. He does perfect front rolls. He tucks his little paws underneath. He does a perfect roll. What an ad for cat litter, cat food, even tuna. He also tries to bury a cup of hot coffee like it's under cat litter. What an ad for coffee. How do I get the attention of say it as a cat lover? I just think this is hilarious. And when I reread it, I literally laughed out loud again. So good.
People pitching ideas, creativity everywhere.
Everywhere.
Nancy, do you have a favorite?
You know what? I don't have a per se a favorite, but when you ask what stands out, of course, it's the most outrageous ones, and one of them that we've laughed about on and off over the years is somebody writing, "So my creative director is really hot, and he thinks I am too. So is there really anything wrong with just going for it?" I'm sure that's how they talked in real life.
Yeah.
And we just wrote in all caps, "Don't do it."
It's a good use of all caps.
Definitely.
It does work. So, we'll go to a time that was very controversial. The ad industry in the past, I would say, and it's getting better, has always had a reputation of being a boys' club. And, and especially when we were coming up, women would have to work, twice as hard and to get recognition, and very few in the creative roles. So, in 2005, and I was at this, you know, Nancy, you made a call, not just, you know, you got into, you know, industry headlines for publicly calling out your boss when he was making disparaging remarks at a creative industry talk. And so, you know, and we know this is, if you go back and look it up, it was a Neil French moment. And, you know, and it was such an important time because it was before the 3% conference, and it was before, you know, when one club, we have the Elevate program, and it inspired a lot of things. But at that moment, Nancy, when you called out Neil French, you know, it was a really tough moment to, as one person, come out and talk about, like, you know, what you learned from that, and how the two of you survived that together.
Well, of course, it wasn't one person. It was, you know, there's Janet. I mean, I did write it very much on the heels of the event.
Yeah.
Right away. Feeling that there had to be pushback to what was said, because on the stage, there wasn't pushback. It was a spectacle. And for all the people looking at each other, horrified, like literally trying to reason with him or something in real time, didn't seem possible. But it was a horrible feeling to let it be left at kind of this pronouncement that women can't cut it, that women need not apply, kind of thing, which was just bizarre on so many levels. So it was done without it. There was a lot of underthinking going on, honestly.
Yeah.
And maybe that's one of the biggest things I learned from it is, if you think, you know, especially in these meeting these big moments, if you think too hard about it, you'll lose your nerve. If I thought even for 24 more hours, or if I had called a bunch of mentors, what should I do? Should I do this? Overthinking. Everything inside me said this has to be done. And of course, Janet's 1,000% right there. And she read, you know, she is, as always, anything I've ever written, pretty much she has cast an eye to. And we very much, you know, we're standing shoulder to shoulder in coming out this way. And we also had the advantage of not knowing enough. We didn't have the first thought of, this could go viral.
Because we didn't know about the internet at that time.
Then the, you know, however many hundred people were at the event was posted on I Have an Idea, which held the event. So I thought, this will reach this group. So again, if I thought too hard about it, of course would have figured that out. You know, let's bear in mind, this could go to a much bigger group. So I think when all is said and done, there was something like 10,000 comments on the post. And a lot of them, a huge percentage of them, were really negative, you know. Ton were super supportive. And you called me from India. I remember that. Said, are you okay?
Yeah. I remember just hearing about it, and just, you know, the backlash, and, you know, I wanted to check in on you and make sure that you were doing okay, because it was, you know, a lot of negative, you know, surprisingly, a lot of negative backlash against you, which made no sense in my mind.
Well, and Janet did a follow-up on the same site, right? Yeah. She wrote her own pushback to the pushback. And then, of course, Janet gets it squarely on her head.
Yeah.
But, you know, I think that what really carries the day is, no matter whether, you know, there's big pariah status for a lot of people. We suddenly had pariah status with a lot of people we'd loved. Yeah. For speaking out. And But what carried the day, and things landed just, you know, as they should, I guess, which was not horrible. Here we are. Our careers were not destroyed.
No.
Um, I keep not finishing my own statement. What carried the day is it was the right thing to do.
It was the right thing to do. And you spoke up for a lot of people who, and we see this in the industry today where we need coverage, you know, to speak up. And unfortunately, you know, we have to challenge the status quo in order to move us forward. And that was incredibly brave. And at the time, you know, it could have, and we talked about adversity earlier, it could have broken you, but it didn't. It just like, it brought you back stronger, I would argue. You know, you had a clear point of view, and really you picked up the mantle for, you know, women. And after that, you know, you led Dove Evolution, which, you know, went mainstream, won every award in the industry, Grand Prix everywhere. And it started the conversation about women and beauty in society. And more importantly, it inspired thousands of campaigns around female empowerment. So, you know, probably one moment led to another. And let's talk about Dove Evolution and just like, what was the biggest surprise from you know, getting that idea out into the world and you know, the start of female empowerment in advertising, I would say.
I think that the whole notion of trying to do what you think is right. I feel like this is one of the big challenges that we have as ad people in general, is so often we have so many masters and so many expectations, and people are really afraid to get in trouble and to do anything to put a foot wrong. And so when all of that Neil French stuff happened, the Nancy and I kind of agreed at a certain point that if we lost our jobs over certain things, and not just that, at various points in our careers, if we lost our jobs over certain things, that we were okay with that, and you know, that it would sort itself out. And so I think that there's a psychology, and I think part of that happened right at the beginning when Nancy first mentioned our very, very once upon a time client, Peter Elwood, at Unilever. When we did the litmus test, that guy was like the bravest person that we ever worked with. And we were all in a lot of trouble. Like we were in trouble, the Dove clients were in trouble for doing that work. We were even in trouble with David Ogilvy. And, but I think that the desire to do things that made a lot of change and didn't do it in the typical way was, well, like we learned that really early on. And so that came with us throughout. So when the campaign for Real Beauty came along and we were involved in like 5 Ogilvy agencies were involved in creating that campaign to begin with. And our office chose to work on the self-esteem fund part of it, which for us was the proof that the campaign wasn't BS. So to Tim Piper, whose idea Evolution was, had dreamed up a series of 1-minute films, and we presented them to our clients here and in Chicago, where it was all being run out of at the time. And there was no ask for that work. Like the work existed before there was an ask. So we went to Chicago, showed them all this work, and they were like, love it, love it, love it. No, got no money, got no way to do it, and no reason to do it, but we love it. So let's just keep it in the drawer and a use will happen. So it's one of those rare instances, I would say, where the work kind of preceded the ask. And when the ask came, it was in the form of how do we get girls and their mothers to come to these self-esteem workshops? And all of that stuff came out of the drawer. And when Evolution was finished, it was supposed to go on the Dove website as part of the invitation to people to apply for these workshops. And Tim secretly just posted it on the internet, which was new, right? It was 2006, I guess, or there, 5, 6. And we didn't know he was doing it. He'd been talking about that we should just do that. And all of us are like, oh, what does that mean? We don't know how to use this. all the grown-ups were like, I don't know, where will this go? Who will see it? What if people who aren't our client, our audience, see it? What will that mean? And he just went ahead and did it. And so one of the great surprises, I guess, for me was, first of all, how powerful the internet was, because that was the first branded, I think only the Mark Echo stuff that Droga had done was the first piece of advertising that actually went up on the web, and Dove was the first branded advertising that went up on the web. And what that meant and how that expanded the audience just for the whole world to have access, and what it meant to bring PR as the push, right, the driver. And I think we were a little bit like, PR before that, you know how ad people are about everything that isn't what they do.
Yes.
And so I mean, oh my God, were we ever worshipful ever after, and recognize the power of all of the different pieces to the puzzle. So in a way, I'd say, beyond the obvious things, listen to the younger ones, like listen to the future way more, and really, really, like, link arms with everybody who's any part of our ecosystem, and grow the ecosystem as much as possible. So for me, those are kind of big lessons and things that came as a total surprise.
That's great. It still is held up as just one of the most amazing campaigns that we'll never forget. We're going to have to start to wrap this up. I want to get into today. So, in 2012, you stepped down from Ogilvy and you created SWIM, like, and again, just like totally, just game changing. In terms of like your vision for training and mentoring, and you mentor groups and organizations and CCOs and individuals, and you made that leap. What has it taught you over the last decade? Like what you've taught so many people, but what have you learned?
I think of it as I teach what I need to learn myself. That's become so clear. It's like everything we know now about great leadership, we could have gone a lot further on many of those fronts. Now that it's our business, things like listening, like it's taught me that that's probably the most important factor in great leadership. And I suck at listening. So I'm better at it now. I'll never be great. It's taught me that, wow, I thought it was just me on so many things. It's the human condition. It's many issues for women are all the same. The barriers to having a good experience tend to be the same, including things like it's hard to be honest. But what's the price if you're not? It's hard to say no in an industry that's all about yes. So aversion to conflict that's at the root of all things going off the rails. I didn't have a boundary when I should have, or I didn't say no when I should have. Fear of failure, huge. And imposter syndrome we do public speaking too. Ask any audience who has imposter syndrome. Almost every hand goes up. It's like, I thought it was just me. Yeah. When did they all realize I totally suck? It's tough. And I think the more you're in a creative industry, the more true that is. I don't know.
Amazing.
And the more you're a woman, the more true that is.
We could spend a whole hour on SWIM alone and just all the things that you teach and the things that, you've learned. things around talent. I'm going to wrap up with just one quick question before we get into Q&A. So you're both legends. Congratulations on the Hall of Fame. So excited for both of you. What do you want to be remembered for? I mean, other than all your amazingness and all the work, but I'm going to ask you as like a headline. What do you want to be remembered for?
In life or in the industry?
Quick answer, Janet. Come on, underthink
It's up to you.
Underthink it.
I don't know.
All right, I'll say I do.
Remembered is hard.
I really would like to think that what will be remembered most is the effort put into mentoring others and helping others to have a better, have their best go at it. I suspect that's one of the biggest reasons we were selected. Maybe, I don't know. I think it probably is. But that's what I'm proudest of, I think.
Yeah. Yeah.
Beautiful. I'll remember you for your impact on the industry and for women and for the work. Sorry, Janet, please.
No, I was going to say everything that Nancy said. And then you said the next thing that I was going to say, which is that women are, to me, women are our sweet spot. And it's been a passion for me personally for a very, very long time. And I'm so grateful to have had the chance to have some impact there, because it's a hard place to make a dent.
True. Amazing. Thank you so much. Let's jump into some questions.
Yeah, hi. Let me come up. Here I am. What an amazing session. I feel like that could have gone on for like another hour. Like I'm not done.
Yes.
But we do have some questions from our audience. I want to make sure that they get mentioned here and we get some time on them. So the first one here is, what inspired the transition to leave your positions as CCOs and do something completely different?
So I was in we've been kind of vaguely talking, we were CCOs for a long time, 13 years. And it's true for us anyway, that we started to think about, what's the next. And we didn't know if that would be together or separate, and we were open to either. But the catalyst for me personally was I was in a client meeting at a certain point, and I suddenly was like, okay, you're going to say that, and you're going to say that, and then you're going to say that, and then you're going to argue this. And that's going to be the brief. And here's how you're going to react to that. And I'm just like, oh my God, I have to go. It was just like, I can't, I'm done. I know this story too well, and therefore I need to do something else. So that for me was the beginning of deciding that I didn't know what the next was, but I knew there needed to be one, and soon-ish.
Yeah.
Yeah, what the next was a ton of thought went into that, and it honestly, it just came from finally recognizing that, considering we were just really, checked a lot of boxes, done with that. What means the most to us was growing people. So that was kind of that's where the river took us to supporting leadership success at a initially very senior level, particularly because nobody learns that stuff. No one learns on the job.
Right. So kind of on that, what is your biggest advice for a young creative that would help them prepare to be a leader down the road?
So many things. Be collaborative. Resist the urge to stick to your comfort zone with the people just like you. make it a practice to listen to people well outside that group, and even seek out perspectives from well outside of your little partnership or your group. I think that sets you up to be a great creative person and a great leader, and learn empathy for people not like you. We get very stuck in that groove.
Yeah, I think we work in many ways in a really self-involved. We work in a very self-involved industry, and we're paid for what, or we're taught that we're rewarded for what we do, and we think of that as as individuals, so it's like my thing, and we're a very much a group of people who say I a lot, and the more detachment in a way. I'm not saying not caring, I'm saying a little more detachment that allows more folks in, and remembering, like now when you look at award shows, the list of people who are credited is like pages and pages and pages long, and that's such a good thing, and it's not an easy place to get to. So build your book, but remember it's not just yours.
That's amazing. Wonderful. Well, we are at our time. Judy, thank you so much for moderating. And Janet and Nancy, thank you again for being here and sharing your stories with us. Congratulations again on this honor. And I look forward to seeing you both and celebrating with you this evening.
Thank you so much. And thank you so much,
Judy.
Yeah.
Really fun.
God.
Really fun to talk.
That was fun. Let's do it again sometime.
100%. There's more to go over for sure.
Bye.
Have a great day. All righty. Our next guest is a One Club member and two-time ADC Gold Cube winner. He is a first-generation Liberian American residing in Dallas, Texas. He is a photographer whose work primarily focuses on subjects of identity and diversity with images that capture themes, complexities and sensibilities of the human spirit, including themes of joy, uniqueness, and community. He tends to work primarily on editorial, commercial, and documentary projects, and has collaborated with the likes of Vanity Fair, the NFL, the Marshall Project, Cosmopolitan, Time Magazine, the New York Times, the New Yorker, the Wall Street Journal, and that's just to name a few. His ADC wins come from his work with Apple on their Hometown Shot on an iPhone series. Please welcome to the program, Zerb Mellish. Hey, Zerb, how are you?
Good, how are you?
So good. Thank you so much for being here today. Did I do
Thanks
okay?
for having me. Yeah, I was impressed. I was like looking at them, I'm like, whoa, who did that?
Yeah, they're so beautiful. When I stumbled across your website as I was checking out our members, I just was taken aback by the beauty of your work and the clarity of your vision. So I'm so excited that you're on here to talk a little bit more today about your work.
Well, thank you for having me. Thank you.
So I'd love to learn a little bit about your journey to become a photographer. How did you discover the art form, and how did you get to where you are now working as a photographer?
It really wasn't like a point A to point B type thing. Where do I even start? Like I'm still working on that journey to become a photographer. I'm still studying light. I'm still trying to understand subjects and how to better tell the story. But I think it started, where would it start? It starts like early on in my, early on in my career, I was working in a store, and one of my friends, at the time, he was kind of like a Renaissance man. He was a DJ, he was a videographer, he was a graphic designer, web designer, he was a photographer. He had like all these different titles. And at the time, I worked at that store for several years. And I was like, what was it? A shift league and then an assistant manager. So I was like, oh, this is all right. I'm getting my degree in finance and accounting. And I'll figure it out somewhere along the line. So he comes in and he just had ideas. Like he was just filled with ideas. He's one of those people, like when you meet, you're like, how did you get so knowledgeable, you know? I'm gonna make it really short. So what's it called? During that time, he would ask me like, what do I want to do going forward outside of like what I'm getting my degree in? And I was like, I'll figure it out once I get at that desk and I'm working on numbers or whatever. I don't know.
Yeah.
So that was like a switch in my thinking. And after several talks, it's like, yeah, just use a little bit of your paycheck, buy something, and try out these different crafts. There's so many things in the world. Why not try it? And I remember the first thing I did, I bought a Rebel T, the Canon Rebel T camera, and it was just amazing. Like, Adam, when I'm telling you, like, it felt like it was a whole different world. Everything became more clearer. And like when when you drop that f-stop and everything's blurry, or when you take a photo of something, either black and white or color, you're like, oh wow, this is amazing. And it was just like my entryway into like what a bigger sea of photography, so that's how I got in, and it was just been a rabbit hole ever since. Like, just it started with street photography, and I used to photograph buildings and just people passing on the street. And after a while, I wanted to get a little bit closer with the subject matter, so I got into portraiture, and then that was just a rabbit hole of just like back to back to back. And even to this day, I'm just like obsessed with storytelling, obsessed with just getting to know people. It's kind of like the camera has been used as a way for me to understand who's in front of me, understand the world around me, get a message through. And it's just like this continuous, like trying to understand like light, how it moves in a space, how it continuously changes, how you can create that in like a black box. I can roam forever, but I don't even think I answered your question.
I think you did. I think that was great. And it's actually going to segue into my next one really well. When I look through your work, you managed to capture people at their most beautiful, but it still feels very natural and honest and unforced. How do you think you manage this?
I think for me early on, like I didn't realize that. I always thought it was the camera. I always thought like if I had the right camera with the right lens, that would be what would set the photo on fire. It would be like, oh, this is great, but it really wasn't. Like I think after a couple of years, I started realizing. I mean, I've been shooting for 7 years, so probably, I don't know, somewhere along the line, I realized the camera isn't it. So it's like a lot of times I'll set aside, let's just say 30 minutes to an hour. The subject might be thinking I'm taking photos, but I know those are not going to be it. It's all about the conversation, getting the person comfortable in front of the camera. Because a lot of times the camera is like this, it's part of the conversation, but it's somewhat outside of it. You have to get one-on-one with the person, whether it's just asking them to really tell a little bit about themselves or just making them comfortable and giving them that excitement that they're in the right place at the right time, and I'm going to do their story justice by, photographing them in a specific way. Or sometimes I take a different route where I'd spent hours thinking about the composition, and then when I get on the set or in front of a person, I'm already have like that blueprint in the back of my head, like this is how I want to represent this story. And that's where my voice comes in, trying to add my voice and also making sure their voice is shining brighter than that, So it's definitely a conversation. It's never just me, it's anybody that's in front of the lens, that's them conversating with me and vice versa. And it's not always easy.
Yeah, I mean, you make it look so easy, but I think anybody who's familiar with what goes on behind great images knows that it takes a very elegant hand, and it's really impressive to see. In your bio, you mentioned your work is informed by your heritage. Can you give some examples and insight as to what parts of your heritage most inspire you and how you see that as coming through your work?
Yeah, I think as a Black male in America, first, I was born in Liberia and I moved here to the States when I was very young. And a lot of my heritage is, I really didn't have much coming in, and looking around me, my family members were just like that connecting piece that kept me together, specifically my mom. And when I say my heritage, a lot of times I just mean like when I look around me, a lot of times I see the world doesn't represent Black people in the best light, So a lot of times I kind of try to take initiative to show like it's very complex to be any type of human. It's very complex to be to exist in this world. So I try to show just the different aspects of Black culture And a lot of times, even past that, you know, that informs me about other cultures and just how to continue to do that. So I think, to try to answer your point, when I say my heritage, a lot of it just deals with my upbringing, you know, how it was hard to go from a third world country in Liberia, get here around the age of 7, and trying to understand what exactly this place is compared to where I came from.
Yeah.
And try not to stand out too much, at the same time try to keep my uniqueness. So when I say my heritage, that comes from where I come from, my culture, or it's just my upbringing in general.
Yeah. What's made you you?
Yeah.
What's one project that's meant the most to you or excited you the most?
I would probably have to say Essential Light, the kind of like the story that the series of photos I take of my mom every year, you know. Every year it's like, I just photograph her, you know. It's either we go to a park, I put up a white seamless, we conversate, and I'm like, yeah, do that, let's try that. Or she'll be talking, or she'll be staring off doing something, and I'll take a photograph of it. And it's just this ongoing conversation I have with my mom. As she's getting older, she's getting so kind, so funny. Yeah. She's the goofiest person I've ever met, honestly. She wasn't that way growing up, but yeah, it's one of those things that she just do something, and I'm like, this is probably the best thing ever. But maybe it's just so personal. Everybody has that person that is like, they just do something, and you're like, oh, that's amazing, you know. So yeah, that's probably the one I'm most proud of, most excited to see where it goes as she ages, as I go on my journey too, and what that project looks like.
Yeah, I'm so happy your mom made it into the conversation. I think when I first found your work and reached out to you, I was checking out your Instagram, and your mom was visiting, I think, and you were posting a couple of stories, and it was just clear that you guys have a wonderful relationship. And when she shows up in your work, it is, I think it's radiant even to those of us on the outside, as much as it may be to you. It's really special. So what kind of projects are you working on now that are really exciting you? And as you look to the future, what are you hoping to get your hands dirty with?
I'm really changing, like, not really changing, but I'm really trying to push more into gallery spaces. Next year, I have an exhibit in Houston. I'm trying to finish up this body of work kind of by the water. I'm titling It Speaks of Rivers. It's somewhere on my website where I'm photographing just different individuals by the water, kind of like there's something about being next to the water where, in a sense, we're born in water. We continue to use water to exist. It's a lot of our chemistry. And then at the end of the day, in a way, we pass with the water in a way. It sounds much deeper, but that's how I thought of it when I started the project. So I'm in the process of creating a series of 100 images based on that concept. And I'm hoping maybe like 20 of those would get the gallery in Houston next year, but that's probably something I'm working the most with. I've never printed my work as large as I'm expecting to print it. And I've never explored this space, so it's so interesting, testing out different papers, trying different things, getting different frames. So I'm most excited about that one.
Wonderful. Cool. Well, we're getting close to our time. And again, I want to thank you. I popped over to the chat and people were so impressed with your work. I hope you pick up some followers, maybe a new client. For anybody interested, you can actually scroll down on the episode page. I've put Zerb's website and Instagram links on the episode page. So make sure you check those out. Zerb, thank you again for being here, and have a great day.
Thanks for having me. See you.
See you. Thank you all for joining us today. I hope to see some of you tonight at the Creative Hall of Fame, and everyone else, I'll see you next week. That's right. We'll be back next Thursday at 10 a.m. where I'll have a conversation with Jessica Janine at Chemistry titled How I Transitioned in the Workplace and How the Workplace Transitioned with Me. Have a great day, and I'll see you next week.
It never happens the same way, but